Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Thank you to everybody who's joined us here today. We are looking forward to having a great conversation. We're live across the internet on 12 different platforms. So wherever you are, thank you for joining us. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, you name it, please join us and be a part of the conversation. Wherever you're at, just look below. You can see that there's a place for you to join the chat. You can post comments, questions, whatever you're interested in. We're going to be talking about today how to use the brain's user interface in order to win elections. And we're going to be talking specifically actually about the Reticular Activating System and how that is what determines your focus. Out of the millions of bit of data that are coming to you at any given moment, you can only focus on a few things, and that's what determines what you're actually going to be thinking about and how that impacts politics. So that's going to be happening in a moment. Before that, though, if you'd like to be a part of our Political Trade Secrets Insiders, get exclusive stuff, please do join us at politicaltradesecrets.com. You can go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up, and be a part of that community, as well as check out all of our previous episodes. We are at something like 200 plus episodes, and on every single topic you can find, go there and check that out as well. Another way you can be a part of the conversation, you can join us by texting me at 202-918-3345 at any point during the show, and we will be able to get your comments and bring those into the show as well. And we also send out resources from the show throughout the day to that text messaging community. So please do join us there. And one of the other ways that you can make a difference is by liking, loving, and wowing the program on whatever platform you are watching on, Facebook specifically for that. But then if you want to help inspire and empower your fellow Americans to really be the most effective citizens possible, as well as to empower them as powerful political leaders for their community, for their state, and for our country, you can join the Share Force. So join ShareForce, make a difference, and help reignite American patriotism, because that's why we're here. We want to reignite American patriotism. It really is what makes a difference. And it sounds like someone's at the door, so we're going to go check that out. And he seems like he's a little bit impatient. But look, it's our friendly neighborhood Sean Bartley. Sean, how the heck are you doing?
Doing well. By the way, your doorbell sticks. So,
well, that's definitely a problem. So, but thank you for coming by and for joining the show. And what would you like to tell people?
Well, hey, glad to be here. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to this topic today. Anytime you can unlock really the way your brain is programmed, and really be able to shift it for what it is that you want to talk about and what it is that where you want to go. It is an amazing day, and so I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a great conversation, and it's a conversation that you can join wherever you are. You can comment. We're on 12 different platforms, as Dustin mentioned, so make sure you comment, and that is the way to get into the program. If you're watching live, you can do that right now wherever you are. It brings it right to us, and we incorporate that for those that have watched before. If you're commenting after the fact, that's great too, because it does a couple of things. One is we do go back, we comment, we reply, do that on the platforms that you're on. The other thing it does is also informs future episodes, so that we can be talking about what it is that would make a difference for you, our audience. So we do appreciate that and look forward to your comments today and beyond.
Yeah, we really do love those comments and how they do direct what we're talking about, and people just they have lots of interesting questions that we may never have thought of before. And let's tell them about a sponsor, and then let's jump into this and get into the topic at hand.
Well, whenever you see the phone here, what's it mean? 10centtexting.com. This is your way to get connected with voters right where they are on their mobile device. Look, 82% of people open every text message they get. So why not make it count? Why not make it memorable? Why not have it make a difference? So how do you do that? It's 10-cent texting. What do they do? Image, GIF, short video right there in the body of the text message. It is your way to get connected. You can also have conversations with people. We talked last week about how conversations for opportunity is how you create opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a way in your campaign that you can create opportunity. And it is a missed opportunity for most campaigns out there. The ones that are actually doing it make it a one-sided communication only.
Yep.
So you can do that all in the 10-cent texting platform. So don't miss the opportunity to do so.
Every time you talk about this, it always triggers me because we see these campaigns out there that just are spamming people, just vomiting all over them with these text messages. They're only text. There's no graphics, nothing interesting to look at, and they don't really provide any value. And the truth is, if you partner with 10centtexting.com, you are going to do rich text messages. That's the MMS. You're going to be given coaching and support to make your text actually matter and have an impact with people and have the two-way communication. It really does make a difference when people do that. So this is the question that people are probably asking themselves as we get into this conversation is, so what is the user interface to your brain and to really everyone's brain? And people probably, hopefully they think it's a interesting, intriguing idea. And it really is a powerful idea. And I would just say, have you ever noticed, like, for instance, you just went out and bought a car and all of a sudden, let's say you have a red Toyota Camry. I happen to have a red Toyota Camry, and you see red Toyota Camrys every single place you go, and that's just what you're going to see all the time, and that happens. So I don't know, Sean, have you had anything like that where you constantly see it?
Absolutely. I think the car example is a great example because it happens. Every time I get a different vehicle, I notice it, and I'm like, I didn't realize I was such a trendsetter. I go out and buy this vehicle, and now everybody has it. It's true.
So back when you had the Subaru Outback, you noticed that everybody had a Subaru Outback. Did they all look like Sean Bartley?
No. Well, a lot of granola.
They're a little bit of granola eating hippies.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of granola. I noticed a lot of bike racks. Coexist bumper stickers, a lot of those.
Yeah, one of these things is not like the others.
I definitely threw off all the demographics. So, but
yeah, but if you're in the market for anything, this is something that happens. Like, let's say you just decide, like, oh, I'm going to go buy a car. All of a sudden, you're going to see all the car ads, or you're going to buy a camera. You're going to start seeing a lot of advertisements for cameras and so on and so forth. There's so many different things or you just met somebody and they were talking about some topic, and then all of a sudden you meet a bunch of people who are talking about the same topic, and you think, like, wow, it's like magic that's happening that is making all these things pop up. And the truth is that maybe there's magic happening. I don't know, but probably not. And what it really is, it's the Reticular Activating System, the RAS. It's a part of your brain. And I'm just going to bore people for just like 30 seconds with a scientific definition of what the Reticular Activating System is. The Reticular Activating System, RAS, denotes that part of the brainstem reticular formation which performs a crucial role in maintaining behavioral arousal, consciousness, and motivation. The RAS receives a wide range of inputs and projects as a diffusely organized neural complex, etc., to the frontal lobe, where they alert or activate the cerebral cortex as a whole. Once alerted, the conscious perceptive part of the brain takes over. So that's a lot of words to say that out of the millions of bits of data, like every single moment of every single day, you're being bombarded with all sorts of sensory inputs. And all these sensory inputs from your ears, from your skin, from your eyes, from your nose, from your mouth. They're all going into that RAS, and then it's going to decide what's going to go to your frontal lobe, and then you're going to perceive whatever it sends. So maybe, a few bits of data are what's going to get picked out of that millions of bits of data. And
Well,
you might have a different way to say that.
Well, I like to think about it like this. It really is the gatekeeper. So think about it like this. If you are out there and trying to think how best to say it. Oh, like let's say you're scheduling an appointment. Someone gets the information and then they determine if that appointment's going to happen or not.
If you're doing fundraising calls and you're trying to get
Yes.
to the big fish, well, if you don't go through the gatekeeper, or if you don't have a good relationship with that gatekeeper, the secretary or the personal assistant or the whomever, you're not getting through, and they will have no idea that you're trying to get in touch with them.
And so the information that's coming in is trying to have a relationship with that gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got this system that keeps certain things at bay, and you'll just never notice until you unlock it. And so one of the greatest examples is the car one, because anybody who's bought a car in particular, you notice it. It is truly remarkable.
It feels like magic. It feels like all of a sudden all these things happen. We're going to talk about other examples. We talk a lot about on this program. We're going to talk about all these different things that, a lot of our methodology is actually based on this one part of the brain. And we're going to be talking about it in a moment. But one of the words that we use often is filters.
Yep.
That this is basically the RAS is the filter for all that information and getting it to your brain. And I think you have an analogy as to how that works.
Well, first, I want to let people know that really it's on average 7 things that can get through at one time out of the millions that are coming in. So anywhere from 5 to 9 is what they say that can actually get through. So, I liken it to like one of the world's, biggest purifying Brita water filters.
Yeah.
Like it takes all that's coming in.
It's more like a zero water.
It is. Yes, exactly. And it keeps out all the stuff that you don't want to drink. And it leaves you with just the clean drinking water in this example. And so you really want to look at that. But the thing that we're going to point out right now is that if you aren't aware of this, you don't know that that's what's happening. So you're getting the information that you're getting, and it's what the brain says that you want to be receiving.
Yeah. And this is ultimately why we say, and this is something people have said in politics for a long time, and philosophers talk about this, physicists talk about this, but the idea that perception is reality. And that is ultimately because your perception, and it's also subjective. We talk about that a lot. Perception is subjective. Your point of view, based on where you're standing in the world, you're going to perceive things differently. And it's not just, that's not enough to say that you will perceive things differently. It's because of the RAS filters things out that you are getting a completely different reality. It's why in this country right now, you can have people living next door to one another, getting a completely different reality based on the TV shows that they watch, based on, if they even use a regular TV anymore, what they have on their phone, and how social media is sending every single different person different items in their feed. All these things to say that your perception is going to be different than other people, but it's going to be your reality because that's the only way you get access to it. And the RAS for your brain anyway is what's determining what's happening, and what you perceive. That's the only thing you can make decisions off of, and what your actions are going to be based off of. So we say context is decisive. Context is another way to say filter. It's what's helping determine what gets through to your frontal cortex to be able to do something about. So we talked about what it looks like. It looks like, your car in your day-to-day life, that is something that comes up all the time. Another way that it shows up in your day-to-day life is if you've ever been in a crowded room, maybe you're at a cocktail party and you're there and you're talking to a few people, and all across the room, there's a group and you hear somebody whisper your name, and through that crowded room, it just like flies around, and all of a sudden it just hits your ear, and like you're paying attention to it immediately.
Yeah.
Any other places that you see, like in your day to day life, that this sort of a thing would be showing up?
Well, I think that is really a great one because the when you have that happen, and I think most people have been in that situation, uh, you kind of just do a head turn, like whoa, what,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of jolts you into hey, I need to be aware of whatever's going on over there. And it's truly remarkable. I think we see the filters in photography too.
Mm-hmm.
It's the way you present yourself or the image and capturing it in the best light and really doing that. And so we have filters for that. Anybody who's ever done online dating knows when someone else is using a filter. I'll tell you that. Anyway,
What you're saying, that maybe that perception of reality isn't what the base reality is.
sometimes the perception does get shattered. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And sometimes their picture may need to take a trip in a time machine because it may
yeah,
not be quite present.
yeah. It's like, oh, was that a relative of yours? Because
Mm-hmm.
that is not you. But anyway, um, we may have gotten slightly off track. But
Yeah. Well, to get us back on track, if you would like to work with consultants who think about this, who actually have been trained and actually have studied brain science and have applied it to their work, you can work with us here at Olson Strategies and Advertising. I highly recommend that you reach out to us if you're thinking about running for office, if you are taking on some big issue and you need to launch a campaign, if you want to have a political action committee. We are great partners to have in that, because we're gonna be getting we'll get really interested in your vision and what it is that you are setting out to do. What is it that you want to accomplish, and actually thinking about how to accomplish that and bringing the resources to bear in order for you to have the strategy and the actions to be able to have that vision become real. And you can reach out to us at Dustin@olsonstrategies.com or Sean@olsonstrategies.com. That's SEAN at olsonstrategies.com, or go to olsonstrategies.com and check out what we have there. And you can set up a consultation with us. We'd love to talk with you. And Sean, I believe we are bringing a lot of people on board right now to do jobs all across the country
yeah,
from this and our other operations.
absolutely. So that is a great place. You can email us those resumes on that side of things. We are looking for campaign managers, campaign coordinators, political directors. We're looking for field directors in a lot of different capacities all over the country. So this is the time. If you said, hey, I've been looking for a way to get involved in politics, now is the time to reach out. We'd love to have you talk to us about what it takes. And we also have our fellows and our internship program. So make sure that you come and be a part of that as well.
Excellent, and thank you for sharing that. It is fun talking to all these folks who want to step up and be political leaders, because that's what this show's about, is empowering people to be political leaders. And then in our own work, it is really fulfilling to help somebody work in politics, and then to see them go on and do amazing things in politics, make the difference that they really do want to make. So check us out at olsonstrategies.com, and you can have a conversation with us specifically about the brain's user interface. And ultimately, it's what sets your focus, either powerfully by choice, which we were alluding to a moment ago, or subconsciously, and you're at the effect of it. So if you're not aware that this is happening, if you think that, you just exactly everything that's happening all the time and you're really on top of that, that's not understanding how your brain works. I get that I'm not aware of most everything that's probably in my field of view. It's, right now I'm focused on this and what I'm doing right now, and I'm completely unaware of anything else that's going on in my environment. So there's a few ways that this shows up for people, where you're subconsciously and being at the effect of the RAS, and then you just don't know that it's actually affecting your decisions or your actions, and it's impacting you. And what would you say is one of the first ways that it shows up, and it really is a part of politics and life in general for most people, and they're at the effect of it?
Absolutely. Confirmation bias, I would
Mm-hmm.
say, is the first thing. And so a little bit about this. This is interpreting information in a way that supports your current beliefs. If you don't think that this exists, I encourage you to go to Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place to find out that confirmation bias exists. Because literally, two people can be putting out the exact same story and have a completely different take on it,
Mm-hmm.
and have people agreeing with them. And that's another thing about this is that you can definitely get people to agree with whatever your confirmation bias is.
Exactly.
So and it just becomes more of like this right thing. Like, no kidding, I'm right about it. So and I'm certainly someone who can fall prey to that.
But every single human can fall prey to it, and that's one of the things you have to remind yourself is that every single human falls prey to this. I fall prey to it. You fall prey to it. It's what's gonna happen. And what you mentioned before, your beliefs have a big impact. So we're going to talk about this when we wrap up this conversation. How you actually impact your reticular activating system is in language, and we'll be talking about how you can actually fine tune it. You can actually, go in there and fine tune your brain to be able to give you what you want. And following on to the confirmation bias, fake news. We all talk about fake news, and thank you, President Trump, for clarifying that for people, because that is a form of he actually reached into your brain, and Republicans, Democrats, everybody, the media themselves, he reached into people's brains and he fine-tuned their reticular activating system to be aware of an idea called fake news. So people can identify it now. You're more likely to call BS on a news story now because he did that. This is a perfect case of somebody who has used the RAS as a way to fine-tune people's brains.
Yeah, and if you don't think that it can be shifted, that is a great example. And look at what the media's been trying to do ever since.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't more. It is truly trying to actually just move you back to when you didn't think news was fake,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed, or that news stories could be fake. Another tactic could have been to, like, no kidding, we're going to actually research our stories more. We're going to actually lay out the facts that we say are in there.
They
And
could have mea culpa and
exactly,
actually reformed, as you're saying. But
yeah,
fake news itself, so the naming them fake news is, in a way, a powerful use of the RAS that Trump
yeah,
used. But fake news itself is something that we can be subconsciously at the effect of,
absolutely.
affecting us. And not can be or could be, we are. And you are, I am, every single person is. Even the smartest people, this really has nothing to do with your smarts. Just think about all the smart people who were at the effect of the Russian collusion hoax
Yeah,
for years, and it affected decisions that people made, real decisions, $50+ million in decisions with FBI, investigation. We had people going, chasing their tail all over the place because Obama and Biden set this into motion, a very divisive and dangerous thing that they knew was BS. And because they believed certain things of their opponents, that it justified all their actions. So their RAS was attuned to this, and it caused actions that then got the media to take actions, and then it caused an impeachment and all this absurdity on, to the point that even after the Russia collusion hoax had been shown to be false, we still had the news story, if you remember, another one of those hoaxes from last year that just, now that Biden's in the office, we are starting to find out all these news stories that were bunk last year and the years before that. But one of those was this report that they had last year that Russia was putting bounties onto U.S.
oh, yeah.
Military personnel, and blaming Trump for that. And it was based off of the idea that somehow, we're even seeing it with Biden's meeting with Russia recently, this idea that somehow Trump was benefited by Russia. That's still, even though we know it's a false narrative, it's still impacting news and news decisions, and the additional hoaxes all have come out of that one big fake news story. It's had people believe things even after they found out the original story was wrong. It still affects subsequent news stories.
Well, and they're even talking about Russian interference, as they call it, today.
Yeah.
About because of the overseas trip for Biden. So when you look at this, they're hard to break. I think about it particularly with the election transparency.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I catch myself falling into the trap of what the other side calls their bills, which is voting rights bills.
Mm-hmm.
I'll call them so-called voting rights bills, but really they're trying to take over state elections.
Yeah.
I don't always think to say it because the way they're described by what occurs is everyone is that way. So you just
they are focusing your brain. They are actually fine tuning your reticular activating system and mine and everybody's, and they're determining the battlefield, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yep.
We have a question: how can candidates shape their vision and share their message with their voters in an effective way using the system? And we will get to that, because part of what you're asking is what tunes the system. The reticular activating system is based off of, one, if you have a vision and if you have a clear message, it's going to naturally have people in your organization and yourself determine your actions and what you're doing. So let's move into how you can consciously determine your focus, because that's what this ultimately does. It's creating focus out of millions of bits of data. It's creating focus. And to Alex's question, that's exactly what your vision does, and having your message does, is it begins to focus it. So one of the ways that we talk about it is what we call strategic distinctions. This can be all sorts of different things: strategic principles, strategic mindsets, axioms, heuristics, all these different things that are simple ways to focus your mind. The British Navy, when they were fighting the Spanish Armada, one of the most clearest strategic principles of all time that had the British Navy that were not as strong as the Spanish Armada, yet their vessels could maneuver better. They had a strategic principle that said, whatever you do, boys, come alongside them.
Yep.
And that was the guidepost for what they did. So that was fine tuning the RAS. So everything they did on their boats, everybody was working towards coming alongside them. So if their boats were able to be next to each other, they knew that they had enough sufficient firepower that they could actually defeat the Spanish Armada. So that was one of the things that they did. A couple of things we've talked about recently is what you do daily gets done.
Yep.
The number of conversations you have for opportunity, or opportunity is a function of the number of conversations you have for opportunity. Those are the kinds of things that we talk about, that if you are clear about that, it's going to affect your actions. Are there other ones that you would add to that, Sean?
Oh gosh, there's so many great ones. I would say thinking about this a little more, it's really the mindsets of when it comes to fundraising in particular, and really getting into what makes a difference. It's the context is decisive, and that you get to really determine. And this really gets into what we're going to be talking about in a minute, determining the battlefield. And so when you're actually looking, when you're actually creating that you have the upper hand, you have the advantage in whatever you're getting ready to enter into.
Yeah, that's one that we actually have is that's particular to the RAS is context is decisive, as you said. So
Yeah.
that's a good one. Something that's outside of what we talk about, but affirmations. That's
Yeah.
one. Is that if you want to give kind of an idea of why it magically seems like things are you know being affected by your affirmation.
Absolutely. So this is to assert something that isn't currently so and say it is so.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like if we're talking about running for office, it could just be taking on that you're being a council member or mayor or governor or congress member, and your actions are going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
If you're taking that on, you're kind of the way you stand, the way you just your presence is different. And by the way, you'll notice this too. Even people who are members of Congress, but say when they announce they're retiring, some of them are being retired.
Yeah.
Now they might still be in the office. They might still, show up, but they're in their mind they're already fishing.
Yep.
So, um,
Their actions are all coming from that.
yeah.
So this goes to way of being, and it's part of what we use when we do our context creation process. Which,
Yeah.
if you go back, we have a couple of episodes where we've talked about that. Specifically on the affirmations, there's probably an interesting story that people should check out. I think it's a really good book, How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big, kind of the story of my life by Scott Adams.
Mhm.
And he talks about this. He doesn't believe in magic or anything like that, but he's the creator of Dilbert, and he had an affirmation like in the 1980s. I, Scott Adams, will become a famous cartoonist. And he just wrote that down every day, like 15 times. Now, he became a famous cartoonist, and Dilbert's known all around the world. Was it because he wrote that down every day that magically the universe, realigned itself to do that? No, don't think so. But I think probably happened is that he took actions every day based on focusing on that. All of his actions that he took, the decisions he made to do this or do that, he had strategic focus in doing the things. Like he probably learned how to draw well enough, and he learned how to, send his comic to whomever, and he scheduled enough time to be able to do this. So that's what all of his actions probably started to be aligned with what he was focusing on, like a strategic principle. So that's what I think it is. And then what you're talking about, like when you are actually being the office that you are seeking, is if you actually hold yourself as being, I am a member of Congress, and that even if you're not actually elected yet, but you're acting and being as that office, you're going to come across to people as the person who looks like they should be in that office. More
Yeah.
so, does that mean you're going to win? No, it doesn't mean you're going to win. But I have a feeling that you're going to take the actions and do the things of somebody who would be in that office, and you're more likely to do it. And here's the thing: you don't have to do a lot of thinking about it. The
That's right.
RAS has set your filter to those actions that would make a difference for you being the office, being in that office, are going to be set to that. It's one of the probably the clearest and easiest things you can do. What's another way this shows up?
Yeah. Well, priming or anchoring. And so a little bit about this. This is the idea that exposure to one thing can later alter your behavior and future attention.
Mm-hmm.
And my apologies for this example if this happens to hit you right where you are. But notice, like it could be noticing a McDonald's billboard could trigger that you're hungry for breakfast.
Yep.
They have the cup of coffee and the hash brown up there, and you're like, oh yeah, I like that. Now, that billboard's probably been there every day when you drive to work for months, and it's today that you notice it. But it's been
if you're hungry, so it works both ways. If you're hungry, you're more likely to notice it, and if you notice it, you're more likely to stop and get breakfast. It's really that simple, and that's perfect. Robert Cialdini talks about this in his book Persuasion, which is his other book is the Science of Persuasion. But the book Persuasion, specifically, he talks about how things in your environment or messages that you get before you do another action will have an impact. And the specific example that he gives, and he's not on our team. He has advised, I believe, Barack Obama, maybe Hillary, other candidates on the left, but he makes the case from research that's actually been done that when voters are presented with a picture of the American flag, sometime, it could even be, a long time before they vote, they're more likely to vote Republican. And how that primes them to think more patriotically, think more about the country, think more about the Constitution, all these different things. It's all right there in that picture of the American flag. And it's not a surprise. We've had a lot of really positive feedback from our episode on Monday, where Sean talked about the history of Flag Day and gave us the history of the flag, and people really enjoyed that. And it happens to be President Trump's birthday, and those two things seem married together. And it's not surprising that Donald Trump, everywhere he goes, it's red, white, and blue. It's American flags, and that's something he gets, that symbolism. But not just that, but the research that shows you're more likely to vote for Republicans because of it.
Absolutely, it is a great point, and something we talked about recently. It's also why the likes of, I believe it's Mara Gay at New York Times was so triggered by it.
Yeah,
like she did, and not that she knows, like, oh yeah, it makes you more Republican, but she basically said that.
It's subconscious for her. This is one of those places where she's at the effect of her RAS. She doesn't understand what's going on, but the reason you're right, she's triggered because she instinctively knows that means that they are on the right. They're on the more pro-America side, and they don't really go for her what she thinks is important.
That's right.
So she views them as the other. I don't know that they view her that way. This is something that can be so amazingly impactful. So President Trump happens to have his birthday on Flag Day. I don't know. I'm not going to say this is the truth, but you could take the case, the fact that he was born on Flag Day and he's associated with the flag and he's used the flag to the point that Mara Gay thinks it's so associated with Trump, it's politicized. It's not unlikely that his birthday being Flag Day and being associated with flags his entire life is probably had an effect on, one, the fact that he became a Republican eventually, and that he thinks this way and that he used it a lot. And the reason I would say that might sound crazy, but the fact of the matter is, if you look at all the names in the, that are out there, there's one name that happens to have a higher percentage of people who go into the profession of dentistry, and that's people with the name Dennis. So your name actually will have an impact on the future profession you have, because your brain is just more attuned to thinking about that because of the somewhat association. So it's not too crazy to think that somebody who was born on Flag Day, lived their whole life, probably was more aware of Flag Day than most Americans. It was somebody who made flags a big part of the symbolism of his campaign, more than anybody. I remember when we were doing the 2016 convention, and we had that amazing screen. It was the best screen that had ever been used for anything, and we had the field of American flags, just like it seemed like thousands of American flags up on that screen. Like it was just you couldn't get any more American flags into that. And every Republican convention we have American flags, but like that was like so many flags. And then of course next week you had the Democrat National Convention, and they had 0 flags.
That's right.
Like they got rid of the flag completely, probably because of Cialdini's research, and they realized that they didn't want to promote people voting Republican, so they got rid of it, which is a shame. But still, that's one of the impacts. That's a priming or an anchoring that happens to people based off of things that they're completely unaware of. So why does this matter? ultimately. So why does this matter to you if you're running for office and you want to win in politics? Well, the main thing is we want to frame the debate. We want to determine the battlefield. As Sun Tzu says, he who determines the battlefield determines the victor. So if we can get people to focus on what we want to focus on, we're more likely to win in our campaign. You mentioned it earlier when we were talking about fake news and how they get you to focus on certain things. They're determining the battlefield. Say a little more about that.
Yeah, they basically draw you into what it is, and so you'll hear it. So just thinking about, the Russian collusion story, everything fit the filter of Russian interference.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. If you aren't sure about it, ask General Flynn if they thought that everything fit into that criteria. Oh, he used Russian dressing on his salad. Gotta be part of the conspiracy.
Absolutely.
So it was, and everything fit into it, and they could not be convinced otherwise, and so much so that they had the hearings and everything else, and hey, they just could not be determined that anything had happened.
Yeah,
and so but they were really creating the context for it, and the other thing that they got is that it could slow down any momentum that might be had out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a byproduct that they were certainly willing to take. So they created that, and it was really the context that they created. Everything fit into it. They were going to find a way to have that be the thing. Like, Russian interference is real, and here it is. And so, and you can see it in other stories, but it really is the best one because they really had every story, anything foreign relations wise. I think, clearly, President Trump has a call with the Ukraine, Russian interference.
Yeah, they aren't even the same country, but people focused on it that way.
Exactly.
So this is an old playbook. I've got the rules for radicals here, Saul Alinsky, and the left-wing media and left-wing politicians. It's their Bible. But the 13th rule from Saul Alinsky is pick the target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. And he goes into a lot of detail as to what that is. But they seize on the thing, they freeze it, they bombard you with it, and it's stuck in your mind, and then they personalize it. They make it about a person. Almost always they tie whatever issues to the person, and then they demonize and just polarize it to the point that there's good and bad on it. And that's the focus. So that's an example of somebody who's using the reticular activating system to really determine for people that there's this and there's that on this topic, and they have you thinking about that topic consistently. Now, Trump was very good at focusing people's brains on topics, but the left in particular, they get you to focus on the topic, and then they give you two choices, and it's good and evil. And of course, they think we're evil.
Yeah, in case you were wondering which side in their world, that's
and another Democrat, James Carville. I'm going to read this because he says it pretty well, and so that's going to save us some work. Military strategists know this is about framing the debate. This is ultimately what we're talking about. We're talking about framing the debate. Military strategists know that most battles are won before the first shot is fired by the side that determines where, when, and how an engagement is fought. Nobody wanted to fight the British at sea, but the British shouldn't have fought the American colonists in the wilds and woods of the New World. Political professionals call the act of defining the terrain of engagement, quote, framing the debate. In 1980, when Governor Reagan of California challenged President Jimmy Carter, Reagan's attacks on Carter's foreign policy, economic policy, and his energy policy served two purposes. They put Carter on the defensive, but more importantly, they framed the choice that voters had to make. Just before the election, Reagan explicitly framed the choice when he memorably asked the country, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" And that's the frame. And he says, your job is to place the frame on the 1 square foot that's most favorable to you and least favorable to your opponent, which then brings in the Olson strategy sweet spot,
Yeah, absolutely.
which we've talked about a lot in the past. But that's what this is doing. This is actually, we are going in and fine tuning the 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 reticular activating system when we do this. So you can see the diagram there. We have your strengths, your opponent's weaknesses, and what voters care about. And then where those overlap, that is the battlefield. That's what you want to focus people's attention on, and that's the choice that you want to focus people's attention on. And if you can make your campaign about that, or make whatever political issue about that, then you have a winning strategy, and you just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing on that. And when you're clear about that, ultimately you're going to see opportunities show up in your environment constantly. When you know what the optimal strategy is, when you know what that argument is, what that choice is, you keep having opportunities to pursue it.
Absolutely. I think the Olson strategy sweet spot really is what you want to get to. So, I think the question earlier was, how do you shift it? Well, we talked about some keys to that. It's really getting into this idea and saying, like, I'm going to be open to first really getting what my opponent's weaknesses are and what it is that the voters are concerned about, because when you can get into that, you can actually take that on. Then you get to frame it where you want.
Yep.
And we see this all the time. Framing and images, framing and other things like that. Here is where you get to frame the debate. We actually had a great episode on this Friday. Where we had Ruth Edmonds on. She talked about basically framing the conversation around critical race theory.
Yep.
And what it takes to actually talk about it in a way that gets to the core of what, particularly what conservatives want to get to in that conversation. So you want to be looking for that, because that's what's going to make a difference.
Yeah, and we have a comment. This is perfect. You just mentioned that Ruth Edmonds is doing a wonderful job of how her message and vision for her campaign is giving voters a clear choice. If you want someone to fight against critical race theory, she is the candidate. And thank you for the comment and for noticing that. And it really is. It's really a clear choice. And I have on here. This is part of our 4 pillars of strategy. This is the first pillar, the where pillar. You have to know where you're going, where you want to take people. And that's part of what your vision's about. When you have your clear vision, it's going to, and you have a clear stand for, like, this, no matter what, this is what I'm going to do in office. It's going to help you make decisions. It's the decision that makes 1,000 decisions.
That's
and it's
right.
The thing is that you don't even have to think about it at this point. That, like, when you know what you're focused on, your brain's tuned to that, your RAS is tuned to that, then you will see all these opportunities in the field of view, as well as the people that you work with. If it's so clear, then you start to fine tune their reticular activating system such that they're seeing the opportunities and they're focusing on it. I'm going to read these 2 quotes, from Sun Tzu, The Art of War: avoid what is strong, attack what is weak. And then this one from Lewis Carroll. It's a great quote from Alice in Wonderland. Would you please tell me which way I ought to go from here? That depends a good deal on where you want to go, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you go, said the cat. And that's really key here, that if you don't know where you're going, then all of these things are just going to be at the effect of whatever is in your environment and what it gets you to focus on, like the fake news and other things that you're just not aware of. And this can be done not just in the grand scheme of the strategy of your campaign, but what we talked about a moment ago, which was our context creation process, and what you were talking about earlier with being who you say you want to be.
Yeah.
And being clear about that, because you're going to see the actions and the decisions and you'll handle things in the way that you intend. So say just to put a finer point on that, is the final thing, that you can actually determine most of your actions by being clear by just a little bit about who you're being in your campaign and as a political leader.
Absolutely. This is your opportunity to really create what it is that will make a difference in how you're presenting yourself. And it's not a bunch of actions that need to be done. It's really getting into like, who is it like that is at my core?
Mm-hmm.
And so for some, it could be inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that was probably the thing at Barack Obama's core,
Mm-hmm.
is that he got the thing that was going to make a difference for him was being
But it's
inspired.
not at the core that it's like something that's already there.
That's right.
What we're suggesting is the RAS. There's millions of bits of data. You get to determine where the filter goes, so you get to focus it. So he could just determine. He could say, "This is why This is the kind of candidate I'm going to be,
Yeah.
because I'm going to be the inspiring candidate, the hope and change candidate."
Yeah. And so that's what he said in 08 and 2012. He was going to be inspiring. And I think you can certainly make an argument that he was.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2020, he said that he was being puppet master. And, I don't know if that's worked out nearly as well as he would have hoped in 2021, but I do think he's definitely got his foot in the door. So,
mm-hmm. Or his hand on the puppet.
That's right. So I think that, so anyway, that is, that's one example. But what, I guess I think about it like this. Let's say you decide that you're being like, let's say you're running for city council. You might be watching this and you're running for city council. And the first question we always get is, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And we say, well, it really starts with who you're being.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're being council member and you decide like, hey, what members of council, maybe the view you have of someone who's a member of council is talking to voters and people who are in the district. Well, one thing you might find out is that they have no idea what city council does.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things you might do is let them know, like, here's things city council can do for you. And, so it could be being informative.
Yeah. It could be being bold. It could be being inspirational, as you said before. There's myriad ways you could be, mm-hmm. and you can determine which way, because this is the same thing with all the information that's coming in. You get to tune where you want to focus that, what information you're going to do stuff with, and what actions are going to happen based on who you're being. So if you are being informative, you're going to be informative. I don't know. That sounds boring to me, but
yeah.
Being clear, being bold, being inspirational, being empowering, there's a myriad ways. And the thing is, you can actually focus yourself as to who you're being. And we use this for communications prep and everything else, because you don't have to remember a big strategy.
Right.
If you remembering the doing, the actions, the things you have to say, you're going to end up like, I don't know, Rick Perry in the debate where he had the different agencies that he had to think of. He had, talking points he had to spit out, and he couldn't remember them for the life of him. He was trying to be perfect or get it right, and he forgot, and he didn't know what to say.
Yep.
Because it was kind of robotic. We also talk about Governor Brewer in Arizona, who had the same kind of preparatory debate practice and had to remember things specifically. She couldn't remember her opening statement, and she just kind of shrugs her shoulders and doesn't want to talk anymore.
Exactly.
It is so awkward and unfortunate. And if she had just gone on, she's kind of a bold lady.
Mm-hmm.
If she just came on like, whatever's going to come out of my mouth is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But who I'm being is being bold, being a leader, and being clear. Well, then maybe she would have said something that wasn't perfectly the words that her advisors wanted, but people would be left with the impression of her being bold and clear, which normally she was.
Yeah, well, and I think back to the Rick Perry example in particular. So, and then when he actually got back into being being, relaxed,
mm-hmm.
I think is one of the ways that he was, he's just like, he said, oops. And
mm-hmm.
he, then he's like, okay, I'm ready to move on. But until then, and, but then in a future debate, he did remember the agency he wanted to get rid of, which was the one he became secretary of. So, you know,
Just the
yeah,
best part. Yeah, Department of Energy. That was one he couldn't think of.
that's right. So,
And it says nothing about his intelligence. It's just that he was more focused on the doing and getting it right as opposed to who he was being in the
and
moment.
that's something to remember. If it's like you got to remember a lot of stats and figures and all this. Look, the again, what the RAS here only lets a certain amount of things through. So
Mm-hmm.
if it's got to be, you've got to be delivering all these stats and delivering them perfectly and all this. It just doesn't work. And even if you got them all correct,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to have you disconnected from whoever you're talking to.
Yeah.
And so that
The best, another great example is the preparation they did for Reagan in his first debate in 1984.
yep,
They were trying to jam him full of stats, and he came across as kind of befuddled in that first debate. And the idea of let Reagan be Reagan is what happened in the second debate. And by let Reagan be Reagan, what he was intending to be is be funny, be aspirational, all the things that we know Reagan to be. He was being relaxed also,
yep,
as opposed to being uptight. And this is ultimately just to say that you have a say as to who you're being, and you have a say as to where your focus goes. And if you're focused on everything, there's no focus. And
that's right.
ultimately, you're going to be at the effect of whatever context is in the environment and what people are giving you, what the fake news is giving you, or anything else. You're giving up control as to what is going to be your focus. And ultimately, at the core of it, strategy is focus, and you have a say in that. So that, I don't know if there's any final thoughts that you have, but that's the last thing I would say is you get to determine this, and your brain is structured for it. So it's done through language. So if you can be clear about what your message is, the choice that you're giving, change versus more of the same, or it's the economy, stupid, and so on and so forth. If you can be so clear about what it is that you're focused on, that's going to be a big thing. If you can be focused on who you're being powerful, being bold, being clear, whatever it is, you get to determine it. You can direct your actions. You can choose how you're going to communicate with people. So you get to choose. And if you're really clear and you can create it in language, write it down, and have everybody on your campaign clear about it, you are going to have strategic focus, and more of the choices that you should be making are going to happen. More of the actions that you need to be taking are going to be taken. And the opportunities that you didn't see before are going to come into view, and you're going to see them, just like that red Toyota that I started seeing all the time once we had a red Toyota.
Absolutely, that is so true. And so you now have the power to shift that. And so, and we'd love to have a conversation with you about it. And so reach out to us at Olson Strategies. It's OLSON strategies.com. You can email me, Sean, SEAN at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. It really is the way to shift what's going on, not in your brain, but also shift the user interface for others.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it can be impacted. We see it every day. So unlock that for yourself. We'd love to have that conversation with you. So reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And, if people want to join us on the texting community, we can send out, you get the daily show. We send out a text with the link to the show. So text me at 202-918-3345. When we talk about the news and talk about talking points around the news, you will get those articles we're talking about. We'll text those out after the show. So again, text me at 202-918-3345. You get a text back with a link. You click on that link. Once you do that, you're opted in, and you will be able to get text from me and Sean, and you'll be able to ask questions of us directly. It's actually us on the end of that text. So please do text me right now to be a part of that community, and join the Political Trade Secrets Insiders by going to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up, get exclusive stuff, and check out our other episodes on any topic that you want to learn more about or consider another perspective for the art of politics and how to win elections. So, Sean, thank you very much for all that you contributed today and for your expertise and advice. And, people have a lot of resources if they want to work with you or with me on their campaign. And I really do encourage people to do that. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with people?
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, Dustin. You really brought this together with the distinctions that we talk about on this show a lot. So go back, watch those past episodes, because it really does make a difference. And I want to thank people for all the comments. It really does make a difference. So wherever you are, keep them coming.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow for our weekly podcast episode. It's our longer format, and it's focused on the audio for all the podcasting platforms. So we'll be back for 11 a.m. for that tomorrow, and looking forward to it. And have a great day.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.